Welcome to Mrs. Crop's classroom. Today we're talking a little bit about Taoism, also about the Tao Te Ching. Taoism is a way of thinking, is a spirituality, but also a way of life where everyone who practices Taoism believes in the concept of the Tao and how the Tao is everything and how we are all just part of the Tao, but also all of the Tao at the same time. We're not just in the Tao, we are of the Tao. And everything that we do and everything that we see is all this pre-existing circle of life that never changes. And while that sounds extremely complicated, it's really just pretty simple. It's pretty go with the flow. It's pretty, we're the Tao, and the Tao is everything, and therefore life is what life is. Now, it's really fun to get into these topics and to talk about what is the Tao and who created the Tao and why do we believe in the Tao, or why do people believe in the Tao. But really, I like to talk about it and bring it all back to the poetry. The most famous Taoist poetry comes from the Tao Te Ching, which is extremely old literature. It's like really old and it's really awesome. And they're some of the most beautiful poems that I get to share with my students. So we're going to look at one now and talk about how you analyze a poem this complex, but also this simple. The first poem that we're going to look at is chapter 1 of the Tao Te Ching. So if you look at this first line, we see that Tao, or the way, can be spoken of is not the constant Tao. Okay, so right off the bat we have our first paradox. The Tao that can be spoken of is not the constant Tao. The name that can be named is not a constant name. So now we've got two paradoxes right off the bat. Nameless is the origin of heaven and earth. The named is the mother of all things. Thus, the constant void enables one to observe the true essence. The constant being enables one to see the outward manifestations. These two come paired from the same origin, but when the essence is manifested, it has a different name. So here we go into explaining what he means right there at the beginning. The essence is manifested. There's a different name. So we have the Tao, and then we have the constant Tao. We have the name, and we have the constant name. Two separate things. One is the actual essence. The other is the manifestation. This same origin is called the profound mystery. As profound the mystery as it can be, it is the gate to the essence of all life. So this poem has quite a bit of unusual terminology in it. However, if you break it down, you can really understand it. So again, the first thing that you notice is that the Tao that can be spoken is not the constant Tao. So you see a difference. You have one is the Tao and the other is the constant Tao. The constant Tao being the more proper form. And then the name is not the actual name of whatever the Tao is. Okay? So then you see that nameless, without trying to put a name on it, we have the origin of heaven and earth. That is what the Tao is. Once you name it, it is also the mother of all things, but when you try to put a name on it, it becomes the mother of all things. So now the poem is going to explain why this happens. This happens because in life you can observe things, observe the true essence. However, once you try to put a name, once the essence is manifested, it has a different name because we put our own words on our language. There at the very bottom we have a capital it being the Tao. The Tao is the gate to the essence of all life. So when we look at this poem, we're going to be looking at our central idea. That's the first thing that you really want to be able to communicate to anybody, is what the central idea of a poem is. And not always, but in this specific poem, our central message or central idea is going to be all the way down here at the bottom. Once you read through the whole poem, the most important statement here is that it is the gate to the essence of all life. That is what the Tao is. This whole poem is coming all together, and the point of it is to express to the reader what the Tao is and why it is the way it is, why it is what it is. So you have the Tao, which is so big that you can't name it, and to try to name it would utterly break what you're trying to show. The Tao is the universe. The Tao is anything and everything around us. It is the gate to the essence of all life. But it can't be named, because once you name it, the name is not as grand as what the true Tao is. Now, this specific poem for chapter 1, we don't see much other figurative language here other than the paradox at the beginning, the metaphors right here in the middle, where we see the nameless is the origin of heaven and earth, and the named is the mother of all things. And then, of course, down here you have the it is the gate to the essence of all life. Now it's less of a actual metaphor, because we're not comparing the Tao to anything. We're actually stating that this is what the Tao is in a more concrete manner. However, the named is the mother of all things. That is going to be a metaphor for naming the Tao, like the difference between nameless and then named. But in some other poetry about the Tao, you're going to see more symbolic things of what the Tao is. Here, we're talking about the Tao so specifically that there is less of a figurativeness to this poem. Again, the main things that you're focusing on are the paradoxes in the beginning and towards the end of the poem. The next poem that we're going to look at is chapter 8 of the NOW Te Ching. This one has a little bit more figurative language, and I wanted to go over this one for you. So here, a person of great virtue is like the flowing water. So right off the bat, reading this poem, we see that we have our simile. Water benefits all things and contends not with them. It puts itself in a place that no one wishes to be, and thus is closest to Tao. A virtuous person is like water which adapts itself to the perfect place. We see the same simile again, just worded a little differently. His mind is like the deep water that is calm and peaceful. Again. His heart is kind like water that benefits all. Another simile. Again, it's the same simile. We keep comparing this person of great virtue or a virtuous person to water in different ways. His words are sincere like the constant flow of water. Okay, so now we have a little bit of a different simile here where we're comparing the words to the flow. His governing is natural without desire, which is like the softness of water that penetrates through hard rocks. So now we're talking about the way that he governs. His work is of talent, like the free flow of water. His movements is of right timing, like water that flows smoothly. A virtuous person never forces his way, and hence will not make faults. For this poem, we see our main idea, central idea, here at the bottom. So this is not the theme of the poem. Remember that when you are writing a theme, you're going to want to take your central idea and kind of rework it to be able to fit all of humankind. However, this is our central idea. This is what the poem is about. It will help you understand. So again, we're talking about a person of great virtue and how a person with a virtue is like flowing water. Now, not to confuse everybody, but flowing water is not the point of this poem. This poem is about the Tao. So we are comparing a person to water, not because they're like water, but because they are actually like the Tao. Because water puts itself in a place that no one wishes to be, and thus is closest to the Tao. And because a virtuous person is like water, they too are close to the Tao. They are like metaphorical water. This is an extended simile, where we see this simile being restated in many different ways. So understand that while this is all a simile, and we are using similes to create this poem, water is being used as a symbol for the Tao. In a lot of poems in the Tao Te Ching, you're going to see that the Tao is often compared to water. So there you go, a little bit about two different Taoist poems, help you understand a little bit about what the Tao is and how the Taoist poems kind of come together, how they're formed, and hopefully you guys are ready to analyze some of your own poems now. So I challenge you guys to go back, look for some poems, maybe dive into them a little bit and tell me, what is the central idea? What is the figurative language being used? What are the paradoxes? And what do they really mean? All of this stuff is super important, and hopefully it helps you get one with the Tao a little bit more. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Chalk It Up to Crop. If you liked it, please like, share, and subscribe these videos out to other teachers or students or people that you know. The more people that like it, the more we can do. Also, if you have any ideas of things that we can create videos for, please send us some comments. We'd love to hear some feedback.